Hello and welcome to the second episode of the HSTV Podcast. My name is Mohammed.
I'm Faras Al-Amri.
And this is Mr. Nies, middle school principal.
Yeah, great to be here. Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So let's just get started. What would you say inspired you to become a middle school principal? Did you always know this would be your career path, or did something just happen and you ended up here?
A little of both. I didn't always know I would be in education, but as I got out of college, I'd always loved coaching. I played a lot of basketball and enjoyed that. And my first job was in sales, which it was good, but I felt like I didn't have that personal connection with people. And I was coaching basketball in youth camps on the side with that, and started talking to a lot of people that taught. And the more I talked to them, I said, well, it really sounds like a great lifestyle. I observed a few classes in California, and from the first one I ever saw, which was my father-in-law teach, I knew right away it was what I wanted to do. And was just very fortunate that to be in a job, it's been a long time ago that happened, that I'm in a job that I love. So that was kind of the genesis for starting the career.
Yeah, so you brought up basketball. So you did help coach the JV team, which I was in.
Yeah, this is my first podcast and being interviewed by our star player. Pretty good deal.
Yeah. So are you also coaching a middle school team right now?
Yeah, I'm helping out. I coached, I was in California for about 14 years as a high school history teacher and varsity basketball coach, then got into administration, then went international to Korea, Singapore, and now here. And I've coached all throughout that, and I love it. So I'm helping out with the program here. First year, it's a little demanding, getting to know everything and the job, which I'm loving. But I want to help out with the basketball as much as I can.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Do you have any other sports that you enjoy other than basketball?
Great question. I love mostly all sports. What I found that I've really enjoyed going abroad, that it's really, I've started to enjoy rugby a lot more, and football is fun. That wasn't in the States. You're just not exposed to that. And a little bit of cricket. So I love that international piece now that I've been here and in Singapore, being exposed to those sports. So yeah, just anything getting out, I'm getting older now, so walking and biking is now more the thing. But any of that I think is just very healthy to a well-balanced approach.
As a middle school principal, what do you enjoy most about working with students and staff? Is there a particular moment or experience that stands out to you especially?
Yeah, I enjoy the most the connection piece. I know, again, no disrespect to other jobs. I'm just talking about what was my preference. When I was doing sales, for me, the day seemed to be a little bit slow. And when I was talking to people, there was always a feeling that I needed something from them. And in a school day, I just feel like the variety is just incredible. The days go fast. I really like just that connection piece with kids. And I think that's the biggest joy. Specific things, I can think of a lot of kids that have, for whatever reason, you've instilled some trust in them and they were maybe struggling, and then you see the product of them turning it around. And, there's a lot of specific examples over the years of kids that had gone through our schools and really turned out to be really, really good people coming from a tough, disadvantaged background possibly. And that's just you can't put a dollar amount on that. That's just a great feeling.
You're right. You have to work in something that you enjoy and like, or else, you won't really enjoy life.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's a hard balance, right? Because you also need to make a living. Like those, it's just, you really have to, people that I think can find a little bit of both in that regard. It's just, it's wonderful. And I've really enjoyed that about teaching. It's just, especially as I get older, to still have that enthusiasm. I don't know in another profession that I would necessarily have that.
Yeah, so since you are a teacher or a middle school principal now, have you ever had to make a decision that would be unpopular? And how did it fall out, and what did you learn from the experience?
Yeah, you have to make a lot of tough decisions. Excuse me. I think the best thing is the due diligence, the process in it, that if you look at a decision that's based on what's best for students and kids, that's the first place to start. Sometimes that's not always the most popular decision. And I think there's been a few that have stood out. I know we talked a bit about, had some students that had broken a behavior contract and there had to be a consequence, and it was explained and the students got it. And that's the thing when you're dealing with behavior. I always ask a kid when they are in that situation, do you feel you've been treated fairly? Do you understand why we're here and what we want you to do and move in a more positive direction. The kids did it, but they were, these kids also had to, that were suspended, basically had to be in a very important game for our school and weren't allowed to play. And you can't, I would never talk about other students to the community. So it was hard to balance that, where it was, you were seen as the lightning rod for, these 4 kids that had broken this contract not playing, and the fallout for that was rough. But I was really pleased that the students actually came to my defense in that and said, no, we understand and it's fair, and it all worked out. But yeah, sometimes that's hard. But I think if you go through what's best for kids and then you look at the communication, which I don't always get right, but you try to be really diligent about how you're talking to someone where it's a difficult decision, and realize that they're advocating for themselves or their kids as well, and just trying to meet in that middle ground. So sometimes it's rough, but I think if you stick with that, it tends to end up in the long run pretty good.
Yeah, it's really important to make sure that people actually know what they're doing, not doing something like dumb. And
yeah. And I think it's, that goes both ways, right? It's also important to realize that we mess up a lot too, and to name that. And just like there's times you get something and you get it wrong, and just to say that. And I think if we all kind of start from that space, it tends to end up a little fairer and better, and people feel supported.
Yeah, definitely. Like the behavior of some students is like very important, but sometimes it can get out of hand with.
Yeah. There's always, different levels of what can happen. But that's one thing I really like. I've taught and been an administrator in high school and middle school, and I love them both. But I do enjoy that middle school piece where sometimes if a student makes an impulsive or poor choice, you can name it early, talk about it, they feel supported, and down the road really, really change that behavior. So I do like that about the middle school years for sure.
Yeah, so have you ever had a time where a student or a staff member was faced with a difficult challenge from learning, or a challenge, and they came to you? So how would you react to something like that?
Yeah, all the time. And I think earlier in my career, somebody would come with a problem and there was a tendency to say, oh, this happened to me, here's what I do this, great, I've solved it. And then they would be like, actually that wasn't what I was saying. And I think the number one thing is really to just take that breath and get to the root of what a problem is. I mean, you think about days when you've had something that's bugged you. It's not necessarily what happens. It may be something that happened 2 days ago that's coming out in a different way. So I think the listening piece and really making that connection and getting to know people and understand, A, what's bothering them, and then B, because you know them, possibly getting them to come up with solutions or suggesting things. I found that that's worked a lot better. I've kind of calmed down on that later in my career. And I think it's easier in that sense to move forward if we all kind of realize, look, we're all here together. We're all trying to fix this, and let's see what we can do. Doesn't always work, but I just find that's a better approach.
Yeah, so you'd say over the years, with the amount you've taught and been a principal, you'd say like your experience of dealing with these subjects have gone a lot better?
Yeah, I think you get stuff repeats itself a lot, so you're more in tune with options that can solve situations. So yeah, I think it's just like anything with experience, right? I go back to my star basketball player when you were talking about you in the beginning, and you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to, achieve these things. And the more you practice at it, it just gets easier, and the better you get at it. But still, sometimes it can go astray. But yeah, I think that experience helps a lot for sure. I'm going to use as many star basketball references as I can. Yeah.
So, as a middle school principal, how do you work to create a sense of community and belonging among students and staff? Are there particular traditions or rituals you value, or is it more fostering culture of respect?
I think it kind of goes hand in hand, and I think it again comes from getting to know people. Like, this is my first year here, right? And just to come in, all I'm trying to do year one is just get to know people, make those connections, figure out what's working, what they possibly want to have change, putting them in the best place to succeed. In terms of, that general community, I think really highlighting the positive things that happen, trying to have recognition assemblies, just even those little, like, when you get feedback and it's immediate and it's positive because you deserve it, that's a great thing, right? And that builds that connection piece. Like, I guarantee, all the students in this room right now, you can think about that one time, whether it was grade school or middle school or high school, where somebody connected with you and it was positive and you felt like, oh, wow, I really can do this. And also in turn makes you feel like you're not afraid to try something and it doesn't work. You get that confidence. So I just think it's a daily thing of trying to connect with many, we all have something in common somewhere and trying to find that piece and move from there.
Yeah, definitely. But I asked a similar question before, but what advice would you give to students seeking with their studies or social challenges at school? And how could they speak and how would you speak and support them through their struggles?
Yeah, it's kind of a two paths, right? The academic piece, I think that the two things that matter the most, and it's kind of hypocritical of me to say because grades are super important. Like when universities look at you, what do they look at? Your grades. But the two things, if you can figure out your organization and make the best effort, you're all going to be fine, right? Because you go through, you're in that joys of IB right now, right? And it's those days where you're a little bit tired. You know what you got to do? I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And if you can just stick with some kind of plan that you're organized and putting in the time, it really makes it substantially easier. I just think that's super, super important. And then always giving your best effort. There's a great book by a lady out of Stanford, Carol Dweck, called Mindset. And she just talks about, they took groups of kids when they were little and told the first group of kids, oh, you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart. The other groups, they just praised their effort. And they watched and charted as the kids that were constantly told they were so smart kind of thought, oh, I'm pretty smart, and wouldn't make the best effort. And the kids that were constantly praised on their effort kept trying and seemed to have a little bit more success. So I just think that effort piece is huge. And then the other piece, the social piece you asked about, was just trying to make sure people don't bottle stuff up. Like there's got to be somebody you can talk to, some adult you connect with, and to make sure everybody has that adult on our campus, right? We all have tough days that the worst you can do, if something's bugging you, you keep building it in or holding it in. And that really, trying to avoid that happening is really easier said than done, but that's super important.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Having a good mindset would help you through anything that, like academics and even being the star basketball player.
Wait, did you just refer to yourself as a star basketball player?
Yeah.
But it's totally true, though. And I'm giving you a bad time, but it's totally true. And it's just all how you approach stuff. Like you have those days where you're tired, you run down, you're not taking care of yourself, and a simple problem is so hard. The next day you're rested, you're like, I can't even believe that bothered me. So it's just trying to develop those positive patterns. And again, it's much easier said than done,
Yeah, because, when something bothers you, it's always going to be on your mind. It's always going to affect you in so many different cases.
Yeah, exactly. And you find it manifests itself in a different way, right?
Yeah, it can really bring you down if...
Yeah, and if you don't talk about it, that's exponentially worse, for sure.
So looking back on your career as a middle school principal, what are you most proud of? What are your goals? Have you achieved any of your goals? And how do you measure your success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's hard to say one thing I'm most proud of, but there's just one that stands out to me, and this is just very random. I think I could probably talk about that, bore you with 1,000 stories about things that you're proud of in this profession, right? But my first administrative job was in California, what they call a continuation high school. And it's basically all the students that had been in trouble with the law. This was their last stop. It was a small school of 60 really troubled kids with kind of some gang history. I mean, it was great kids. They'd just been dealt a very tough hand in their upbringing, right? It was kind of that hereditary versus environment argument. And we had a kid that had a big gang history, and he was in and out of trouble all the time. And he also, in starting to get to know him, was just an amazing chef, loved food. And we set him up with a work program with some hotels in San Francisco, and now he's it just connected. He got out of that lifestyle, and he's a fantastic chef in California, great family. And it was just one of those, again, it just the feeling of like our whole team really kind of turned this kid around, and we're super proud of that. So I'd say that if I had to pick like one random thing, that would stand out to me. Sorry. And there was a second part to that. I got all kind of fired up on that. What was the other part you asked me? I'm sorry.
How do you measure your success? And
yeah, I think a couple of metrics, right? You obviously academically, you want to look at that, we're adhering to the curriculum, kids have support. I think when we look at data and grades and tests and all those things and teacher anecdotal evidence, I want to know that if someone's struggling in a class or getting help, I want to know what we're doing for those middle kids. And then I want to know that if somebody already knows the curriculum and how are we extending their learning, how are they being challenged. So I think that is a big area. And then just the wellness of your students and staff and the community. And that's, you know, that's just a feeling too, you know, and I really appreciate when people come in and say, hey, this isn't working, you know, and that's kind of the best thing. Like, oh, great, you're comfortable enough to talk about it. And we don't want to be defensive. We just want to see how we can solve it because, you know, we all want basically what's the best for you folks.
Yeah, because it's really important, you know, how middle school, they're going to end up transitioning to high school, you know,
Sure.
it's very important that they're ready and
Yeah.
prepared for high school.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's twofold, right? It's the academic piece and it's the social piece that they feel supported. So, yeah, there's a lot of metrics for that. But I think one of the draws of coming here was just the feeling of this place. And I kept hearing about the ABA community and the ABA way and all that. And then you come here and it's true. It's just a very supportive group of folks, and it's pretty nice in that regard.
Yeah. So I think that's it with our questions.
All right.
It's been amazing. It's been amazing having you here.
Yeah, I appreciate
and
it.
It would have been amazing if I had you in middle school.
Feelings mutual, but
Yeah.
it's my first podcast. I didn't realize how professional the setup was. Well done.
Yeah, only for the best.
Yeah,
We
right.
take our stuff seriously here at
Well,
HSTV.
I'll tell you constructively, like the vibe, super comfortable, really easy to chat. So yeah, I appreciate it. Well done.
Okay, thanks.
All right, take it easy, guys.